That was a good intro, though.
3, 2, 1.
Good morning, sports fans. I'm Chad.
I'm Ethan Larson.
We're here to bring you the second episode of In the Huddle.
Today we're going to run down the Elite Eight. We're going to preview the Final Four, and then going to bring you a little bit of soccer, International break, and Champions League. Chad, the game just ended last night. Kansas, Duke. Kansas came out 85-81 winners. How did you feel about the game?
I tell you what, man. As a diehard Carolina fan, I was definitely cheering against Duke. So, Grayson Allen made some big shots for Duke in the second half. I'm not going to lie, it's kind of sad to see his career over now. Senior, had a great 4 years, but I think that was the big takeaway from the game. Just the seniors, or this one senior for Duke, Grayson, versus the senior leadership of Kansas. They had Devontae Graham, who came up big for him, and Svi Mykhailiuk, their senior backcourt, which is really huge for them.
Which is kind of interesting because a lot of the big programs now just gotten used to the one and done policy, but Kansas over these last few years being able to keep players that long, do you think it's because of their talent being so low, like that they don't have as high of a ceiling as maybe some of these guys like Marvin Bagley or something like that, or do you think Bill Self is just able to keep those guys in the program?
I think it's kind of a combination of both. I think when they first get there, a lot of the Kansas freshmen, it's hard for them to play right away because Bill Self, he's been so successful, he doesn't feel the pressure to play the guys right away if they're five-star, big-time recruits. He has the pedigree where he'll sit them if they need to, if he doesn't feel like they're ready. And so then that just gives them longer to develop. By the time they come sophomore, junior, senior, then, you see guys like Devontae Graham, Frank Mason before him, just guys who are ready to ball by the time they're upperclassmen.
But then also you can think about these guys in the league. When's the last time Kansas really produced a player in the league?
Yeah, they got probably one of the young faces of the league right now, Joel Embiid, and then Andrew Wiggins, which a pretty polarizing player. I know we were talking about him a little bit earlier today. But, that's like their young energy that they've interjected. Other than that, really not too many. Besides that, the last star they really had, probably Paul Pierce, which was way back in the 90s when he came out.
Yeah, and then obviously Duke. The big story now is when is Marvin Bagley going to say that he is going to go to the NBA? Do you think it's 100% positive that he's going to the NBA?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think he proved, he won ACC Player of the Year as a freshman, and he pretty much dominated the league, I have to admit. I think it's just a matter of time before him and even his front court mate, Wendell Carter Jr., before they both go ahead and declare. Both of them pretty much guaranteed top 10 picks, so I don't see why they wouldn't.
And who from this Kansas team do you think could go, since they had so many older players, who do you think could go and get a good draft spot?
I tell you what, after watching the game tonight, the guy who I am really high on from Kansas is Malik Newman. He's a redshirt sophomore, kind of like a combo guard almost. He transferred in from Mississippi State. When he was there, he primarily point guard. So now he's gotten to Kansas and he's been a secondary ball handler, kind of a setup guy. He knocked down 5 huge threes for Kansas tonight. I think he scored 10 points for him in the overtime. So, ended with a game-high 32 and 7 rebounds. So he's, in a high-profile game like that, I think it's really important to see the stars come out and play. And he balled for sure.
I think that kind of draws parallels to another player that had kind of a breakout game at this stage last year, kind of like a De'Aaron Fox type of thing, where it's like everyone knew that he could play, but like then he had that one game at the top level that was kind of just like, whoa, like no one really, they were expecting him to play well, but I don't think they were expecting him to do anything like what he did against UCLA.
No doubt. De'Aaron Fox definitely, I'm not saying Malik Newman will be able to go as high as Fox, who went 5th in the draft last year, but I could definitely see the game that Newman had propelling him into maybe a late first round, early second round pick type of guy. So I think that's kind of a good comparison because Fox blew up last year on the scene against UCLA. Newman tonight against Duke.
All right, the next game that was on last night was Nova Texas Tech. Now, me and you were watching a little bit of this game together. I thought that Texas Tech probably played the worst basketball in the history of the Elite Eight. It was just watching them play hurt me. They were like basically just running around with their chickens with their head cut off. They were misplacing passes, just missing open shots, missing little layups and little dunks. Like it it wasn't even that Villanova clearly looked like the better team. It's just that Texas Tech asserted themselves as the worst team.
Yeah, I think for Texas Tech, it really started with their lead guard or their guard and their leader Keenan Evans. I mean, if you look at the stats, he was 3 for 14 tonight. Only he ended with 12 points and 4 assists, but like I said, 3 for 14 from the field, 0 of 4 from three. Uh, he only had one turnover, but just really didn't play that great of a game. Didn't find a groove at all. Couldn't really find a groove at all. And I think that's where you have to give a little bit of credit to Nova's defense. They showed a lot of different guys on him. Jalen Brunson. They gave Phil Booth a lot of time on him. And they even sprinkled in a little bit of Mikal Bridges, their high-touted possible lottery pick. So I think Nova did a good job of defending, mixing up Evans.
Well, I think it's just kind of interesting thing about the game was that it was weird that it was such a high profile game, but yet Texas Tech looks so unmotivated. Like I've never seen a team at that stage just like where everyone on the court looked like they didn't want it. Like we saw one play where, long three, obviously, from Villanova. Everyone's boxing out and then just waiting for someone else to make a play on the ball. Like it was just looked like nobody wanted to be out there. It was, I don't know if something happened behind the scenes before the game, but it was so weird watching that game. It just looked like nobody on Texas Tech wanted to be out there.
Yeah, a guy who kind of shocked me for Texas Tech is Zaire Smith. He's a forward for them. Later on, or the first 2 rounds of the tournament, he was starting to receive some lottery buzz because he was really breaking out this season and in the tournament especially. But tonight he was 3 for 8. He did get 7 rebounds, but only 7 points to go with it. 3 fouls, and only played 28 minutes. It just didn't seem like because he's really their energy guy. He's a glorified energy guy for them. He just didn't feel like he brought it tonight. And like I said, with the struggle of Keenan Evans as well, between those two guys, it was difficult for the Red Raiders to kind of get a rhythm or bring any energy. So.
Jalen Brunson, this is a guy that neither of us are really convinced on.
Nah.
Do you think? I mean, what do you go like 4 for 14 today from the field,
Yep.
or yesterday from the field, and it was just like every time I watched him, it looked like it's kind of like watching. Trying to think of it, like kind of like Grayson Allen a little bit from the commentators, because it's like even when he screws up, everyone thinks that it's calculated. It's like, oh, he threw this pass away, but it was only because, but it's always someone else's fault. He threw this pass away, but the center could have gotten there, but he got back and played defense, or even remember that play he was running back on defense. They're like he just couldn't find the ball quick enough, almost did it, but a great effort. And it's like, it just seems like he's getting a lot of praise for stuff that is completely detrimental to the team.
I almost think that was the scary part about Nova. I mean, you look at their 2 best players, Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, combined, they were only 7 of 24 tonight and 0 for 9 from 3. And those are 2 guys that rely heavily on the 3 ball. And for them to play not as poorly as they did, because, I mean, obviously they played well enough for the team to get the victory, but they did not have the greatest games. And for Villanova to still take care of Texas Tech pretty handily, I think that says a lot about Nova and their chances the rest of the way.
Yeah, well, in the next games, the games that were on Saturday night, Loyola Chicago, Kansas State, the big Cinderella story. Yeah. Again, I mean, Loyola Chicago. It's really difficult to watch some of these games,
Yeah, I understand.
With my schedule and your schedule. I mean, you watch basketball a lot more than I do, but they ran out big winners. It wasn't even like, it was kind of like what we saw earlier in the tournament with UMBC. It was like they were the big underdogs, but ran out big winners. What do you think about that?
I think it was especially interesting for Loyola Chicago. Their first 3 games in the tournament, I saw a stat. I think it was their first 3 wins were decided by like a total of 5 points.
Yeah.
So they were like, I know they hit game-winning shots last 5 seconds. Their first 2 wins, and then they barely squeaked out against Nevada as well.
Nevada, we should have been in that game. For those of you who don't know, Texas fan, we've lost to Nevada in OT in the first round, so that was fun.
No, but going back to Loyola Chicago, yeah, they just came out tonight and really just hammered Kansas State from the jump. The guy I was surprised with for Loyola Chicago, Ben Richardson, he's a senior guard for them. I think the first 3 games of the tournament, he had like 15 points combined. We hadn't really played a huge role offensively for them, last night or 2 nights ago came out, had 23 points, hit 6 threes for Loyola Chicago. So with him spacing the floor, that created a lot of attacking lanes for the guards, and Kansas State just showed that they were not up to the task tonight or that night for Loyola Chicago. And hey, Sister Jean is still dancing in Loyola, so we'll see what they're going to do down in San Antonio next week. And who are they? Let's talk about the matchup that they or the team that they're going to be playing.
Florida, Michigan.
Yeah, Florida State and Michigan.
Florida State, Michigan. Yeah.
Um,
Florida ended up. Florida State ended up losing that game semi late. Michigan hit some big shots down the stretch, and Jalen Rose actually ended up picking Michigan for his bracket. I thought it was a joke at the beginning of the tournament, but now it turns out it might actually come out for him. What do you think has been their key to success, especially in this game?
I'd tell you the guy for Michigan who this tournament has really shown a lot has been Muhammad Ali Abdul-Rahman. I know that's a mouthful to say, but he is their senior point guard. He's their leader. Only had 9 points in that game, was 3 of 9 from the field, but just really in the tournament, especially a senior point guard, a senior leader who's just a calming presence.
I say a lot of times you need a lot of it's interesting, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. We were talking about the one and done guys. I think coaches now are starting to appreciate more how important seniors are. I mean, though Duke lost, Grayson Allen. I mean, you could see it when they were in high intensity games. Even when they lost to UNC, you could see he never looked like he was scared or he was panicking. He always looked like he was calmed down. And even though I don't particularly like Grayson Allen, you can still recognize that having that senior presence on the court, having a 22 or 21, 22-year-old guy out on the court with a whole bunch of 18-year-olds, it really calms them down. And so you're saying that he's been that for them?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, late in the game, Michigan, I think, was up. They took a 10-point lead with 2 minutes left to go, something like that, off a key three by Duncan Robinson, their sixth man. And then Florida State came back and punched them in the mouth, was trapping them in the backcourt and everything. And they just looked flustered. But then Abdul-Rahman, every time he got the ball in his hands, he just seemed like he was that calming presence. He was stepping up to the line late in the game, hitting big free throws for them. So I think he was definitely the key to their victory, especially considering Moritz Wagner, their big man, did not have a great game. Really struggled from the field. Was 3 of 11. Only ended up with 12 points and was 0 for 7 from the three, which is really one of his go-to moves. Yeah, that's all. Now let's go ahead and preview the matchups that they got coming up for the Final Four. Just talk about these briefly. Later on in the week, though, we are going to give a full deep dive on a Final Four preview coming up later this week. Right now,
we're going to talk about Loyola, Michigan, kind of the underdog game, if you will. No one really expected these teams to get this far, especially not in Loyola, Chicago, but probably Michigan. People were expecting to do well, but I don't think anyone expected them to get this far.
Yeah, for sure. I expect Michigan to come out, and I'm not going to say that I expect Michigan to win because Loyola, Chicago, they've been shocking me the whole tournament. I had them beating Miami the first round, but ever since then they've been shocking me left and right. But I don't never want to count them out. But I just think Michigan, kind of like what I said, Abdul-Rahman, his presence. Another guy from Michigan who I didn't mention, Charles Matthews. This dude is a transfer from Kentucky. He was a 4-star guy, which a lot of schools would love to get a 4-star recruit, but for Kentucky, that's like the last man on their bench.
Yeah.
So, Charles Matthews, he transferred to Michigan. They've put the ball in his hands, and he's been explosive this tournament. He had 17 and 8 against Florida State and the athletes that they have. I feel like he'll be able to play at his pace and be able to, between him and Abdul-Rahman, they'll be able to control the tempo against Loyola Chicago. Probably keep it an up and down game. I expect Wagner to have a big bounce back game, so I like Michigan for that one.
And then Villanova, Kansas. Now, me personally, I had Kansas going out very early in this tournament. I was counting. I mean, they've been shaky at best in tournaments in recent years. I was expecting that to happen again, but as we already said, those older presence or the presence of those older players has really been key for them. How do you think that's going to keep up, or do you think? Because I would think from what I've seen at least, I think that Villanova is the more talented team. But do you think that that senior leadership from Kansas is going to pull through?
Well, I tell you one thing. The only reason why I would say that the senior leadership from Kansas is almost evened out by Villanova. Jalen Brunson, he's their senior point guard as well. A lot of those guys that are on Villanova right now have that experience. They were part of that tournament team from 2 years ago. Eric Pascal, he was on that team. Phil Booth played a big role. Mikal Bridges, like I was talking about earlier. So really everyone that's playing heavy minutes for Villanova has that experience with the exception of Dante DiVincenzo, the sophomore, and then Omari Spellman, the redshirt freshman. So
Amari, your boy.
yeah, God, that guy, man. I tell you, I'm not the biggest fan of his, but every time I watch him, I'm just impressed. He's shown his ability to hit the three ball consistently, rebound, play some defense. Had a huge block the other day against what was it?
West Virginia.
Yeah, had a huge block in the West Virginia game.
Well, he had the block, and then he went down and dunked on the guy.
Yeah,
I mean, huge, incredible sequence.
Huge play. So he's been making a lot of big plays for them. I feel like both of these teams mirror each other a lot. They're both really relying on the three ball. They hunt the three ball, and then they play with one big man. And I think that's where the big matchup is going to be. Kansas, they're going to have Udoke Azubuike, and then versus Amari Spellman. Azubuike, kind of your more traditional big man, kind of roll to the basket, set the picks, rebound, dunk. Has decent post moves, but hasn't really flashed them a lot this season. Versus Spellman, who's more of your modern big, able to go inside-out combination, rebound, block shots a little bit. So I think that's where the big matchup is that we're going to have to look forward to on Friday night.
All right, we're going to have to move on so that...
Sorry, check that Saturday night. Yeah, that's when the Final Four is.
Before we go a little bit too far in. But staying with basketball a little bit, who are some players do you think, drafts as far as draft stock, who do you think were some big winners that have already been knocked out?
Talking about from the tournament so far? I think one.
I mean, we've seen players like Mo Bamba and Trae Young come out, but they were already before the tournament. People already knew that they were basically going to come out already. Anyone that like this tournament's really helped?
I would say definitely in the West Virginia Kansas game, or West Virginia Villanova game. I know Javon Carter, senior point guard from West Virginia, didn't play his best game, but I'm just such a fan of his. He has such a controlling presence, and I feel like in today's NBA, the way they're playing multiple point guards at the same time, and he's such a versatile defender, Carter is, that I feel like there will definitely be a spot for him, maybe late first round, early second. And then, like I talked about earlier, Malik Newman from Kansas, he's definitely shown that he is a high-level NBA player and is going to be able to be a spark plug, a 3-and-D guy for a lot of NBA teams. You know, that's one of the more coveted positions. And then another guy, he's been receiving lottery buzz all year, but I think he's continuing to rise, especially in this tournament. He got knocked out in the Sweet 16, was Robert Williams, from the big man from Texas A&M. He's a sophomore. He could have came out last year and been a lottery pick, actually, but decided to come back for a sophomore year. Brings a lot of energy, dominated Carolina in the Carolina-Texas A&M game. Broke my heart, but, you know, it is what it is. But Robert Williams definitely is a guy who I would continue to keep your eye on, especially if you're a team drafting the lottery that needs a big man.
All right, cool. Now transitioning over, they had some international break for all soccer fans out there. It's kind of a dreadful time because there's not consistent big games on every day or every weekend. But we had some interesting matchups. Spain Germany was the one that I wanted to highlight first. Germany kind of a experimental lineup, but not really. I mean, Marc-Andre ter Stegen has been one of the best goalkeepers in the world this season, playing for Barcelona. He's probably going to get if Manuel Neuer doesn't come back, I'm pretty sure he's going to start in the World Cup because he's been out this year with a foot injury. I believe it's either a foot or ankle injury, so he's been out. Jonas Hector, even though he's probably going to be the first player to play for Germany and get relegated in the same year, it's going to be interesting to see that. Timo Werner up top. I watched some of the game. He did not look good at all. I watch soccer a lot more than Chad, so probably going to be leading a lot of this. But he's very quick forward, plays for RB Leipzig. I think he has, I think last year he scored 21 goals in the league. This year he hasn't been as prolific. I think he has about 12, but there's about still 6 to 8 games left in the Bundesliga. the German top flight. But yeah, he did not look impressive at all. They were getting him the ball in all the right spots, and he was just wasting so many chances. It was just very, very worrying if I'm Germany, because I think they need him to play if because they've obviously lost Miroslav Klose, and in the last World Cup they experimented with playing a false nine without playing a true forward, and it just was not. I mean, they were winning games, but it wasn't the same Germany that we saw in like the Confederations Cup, for example, with Timo Werner up top. He's just so explosive, and um, having that option in behind just stretches the defense out so much. Then their technical players, the Tony Krooses, the Mesut Ozils, the Julian Draxlers, Thomas Muller, they can all have so much space to operate in. And they played against the Spain side.
And sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No,
I
you're good.
just wanted to interject. You were talking about that German team. You start naming some of those for those soccer fans who really follow the international game. You start naming those guys that we've all heard of: the Thomas Mullers, the Sammy Khedirs, the Draxlers. Those guys, the guys that would become a staple for Germany. How do you feel like that cohesion within the team is going to be able to help them for the World Cup, or do you feel like it's going to hurt the guys being almost a little bit older and maybe not being in the same top form that they've been in years past?
Well, the interesting thing about Germany is that they have so much depth. I mean, they played uh, a team in the Confederations Cup that, like, only a few of them had any World Cup experience at all, had any played in any of those World Cup or European Championship squads. I mean, they have so many young players coming through. Julian Brandt, who's under 23. Matthias Ginter, who I believe is 23, 24. Timo Werner, he's still a young player. Nicolas Zula, who was just bought by Bayern this past summer. I mean, they have so many young players. They basically played a second, like a B team in the Confederations Cup and still won it. So it's just, I think
That's not good news for the rest of the world.
yeah, I mean but the cohesion is interesting because with so many big name young players, they have to find a bit of a balance because kind of like we were talking about basketball earlier, you want as much talent as possible in there, but you also need that seniority to bring that leadership.
For sure.
Because you don't. Though it's great to have 21, 22-year olds to say, oh, okay, I can build around this guy for the next 10 years. You also don't want them to be like, oh, this is my first ever World Cup game,
right. That big stage is
yeah, and we're down two goals with or at halftime against a really good team. What are we going to do? Right. Rather than if you have a 32-year-old defender in there saying, okay, I've been down 2 goals, and I've been playing the last 3 World Cups. Like if they had a Jerome Boateng who played in the 2010, 2014 editions, if they had him back there, they'd be like, okay, we've done this before. I've done this before. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to stay calm. We're going to get these goals. Yeah. But yeah, they have wealth of talent, which they can do basically anything with. Spain, also very, very, very talented team.
Yeah. This is definitely a matchup of two of Europe's finest, I think, in this matchup.
Yeah, and their goal scorer was Rodrigo, to counteract Muller's long shot. Absolute belter going in the top corner.
I saw it, man, and oh my gosh. I don't get excited that much by a lot of soccer stuff, but that goal by Muller, man, it was a banger.
Yeah, and Rodrigo's goal, very, very Spain-like. Basically, he made a run from the center of the area. He made it away from the goal, interestingly enough, and Andres Iniesta was just able to pick him out in behind. Andres Iniesta, one of the best midfielders of our generation, he was able to pick him out, and it was just not a simple finish, but he definitely had time to think about it and be able to pick his spot and score. Rodrigo also hasn't been in the Spain setup too much, especially as of late, because he used to get in kind of as a young player. He wouldn't really get in the squad, but he was in the conversation for a call-up a while ago as a young player, but now he's playing very well for Valencia, and now he's ready to make his name, especially with that number 9 spot up for grabs, with people like Diego Costa being whatever mental problems he has going on right now, because he's just all over the gap right now.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you look at the lineups that I saw from both Germany and Spain, I think the common denominator is throughout the field you see a lot of the guys that you're used to seeing from them, especially in the midfield and the back. But then once you get up top, that's where you start seeing the guys, the younger guys, the more inexperienced players who kind of are those fresh legs that they're bringing to the team, the guys that they're starting to incorporate a little bit more, trying to get them ready for the World Cup this summer.
Well, it's just like in what I was talking about earlier, where as a big thing in soccer about being a defender, being able to be a leader, being to have that calm presence. Rio Ferdinand has said it multiple times that he doesn't like emotional defenders, and a lot of young players are emotional. They're gonna let their even not even poor emotions like their excitement or their eagerness to play in a game. They're gonna let that get in their head, and then they're gonna come in and foul a guy 10 minutes in the game, get a yellow card. If you're as a center back playing on a yellow card for 80 minutes, that's not practical at all. They cannot have that. So we like to have a lot of experience in the back, and then try and test the young guys up top. But also in a game like this, though it is only a friendly, you don't want to get not embarrassed, but like if you get beat, then they might go into, if you see them in the World Cup, they might go in saying, "Hey, we just beat this team a few months ago." So
give them that confidence.
they give them that confidence, and you can't have that, especially if you're a team that's as good as Germany. If Germany goes into that game with that much confidence, I can't think of a single team that could beat them.
Gotcha.
And the next game we wanted to talk about was England-Netherlands. Now, this game was a bit interesting in the fact that these are two teams that have been slightly tainted over the past few years. I mean, Netherlands didn't even qualify for the tournament for the World Cup, so that's
sounds like the U.S.
I mean, yeah, but the U.S., though we are in a much easier region, we also don't have anywhere near the
talent of those countries.
The talent or the history that those countries or that country has. I mean, well, Johan Cruyff, Marco van Basten, Ruud Gullit, people like that, all from the Netherlands. You can't really name people that have been generation-defining players that are from America, except for Americans, or like they only really, what am I trying to say? Like define the generation for Americans, like Landon Donovan and Clint Dempsey, but Netherlands, you can think of so many great players from them. I mean, even even though you don't watch soccer that much, Stefan de Vrij, Memphis Depay, Robin van Persie, people like that.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, Netherlands use this to, which is kind of interesting. They use these games to just basically play whoever they wanted, just give people some international call-ups, get a lot of young players in. Who wouldn't normally get a chance if they were preparing for a World Cup, which I think is a semi-good thing. I mean, it's always good to get new faces in the side,
sure.
Give them that confidence, saying, I got an international call-up, now I see what I have to work for and what I have to work to.
It's kind of like what you were just talking about with the Spain and Germany, where you talk about those guys that kind of give them that perfect blend of experience, but still being able to give them that youth to where that they're able to give them a lot of energy throughout the game, but still keep that calm composure with that international experience.
Right, and they brought in names like Matthijs de Ligt, who, if you pay attention to young talent in Europe, he's really, really, really probably one of the biggest defensive talents in the entire game. I mean, he's only 18 or 19 years old, and he's captaining the Ajax side, who's second in the league right now. Not really making much of a title push since they're so far back from the team in first, who I believe is PSV, I believe, in the Dutch top tier. But yeah, he's come on well. They also gave Justin Kluivert a look in. He was on the bench. He's the son of Patrick Kluivert, actually, who was one of the best players of the 90s, youngest player to ever score in the Champions League final, stuff like that. Very talented player, and now his son's coming in, making a name for himself. Just the Netherlands side, very, very experimental. I wouldn't expect them to do anything like this for like an actual tournament.
Right.
But the England side was also surprisingly experimental because, like I said, though they weren't playing against another side that's going to be in the World Cup, they don't want to go into a World Cup game saying, oh, we lost to a team that's not even going to the World Cup, so what's going on? Mm-hmm. They still brought in names like Alfie Mawson from Swansea, Harry Maguire from Leicester, James Tarkowski, all these people that don't have any international caps and aren't even young players, so it was kind of interesting to see them get in. But also the fact that they called up Danny Rose, who basically doesn't play at all for Tottenham, was kind of interesting. It sort of seemed like very England thing to do because they've been criticized in the past for just calling up people based off of their reputation rather than their actual talent at the time. And
I think one of those guys, didn't mean to interject, but A name that I see when I look at the English side, one of the big names that stands out for me, a guy who a couple years ago was dubbed one of the up and coming young players in England's top league, was Raheem Sterling. Maybe just talk about his development a little bit and what he's going to be able to bring to the team this summer.
Now, a lot of the England fans believe that Raheem Sterling is basically their only hope of winning the tournament, which, in my personal opinion, if he's their only hope of winning the tournament, then
they have no hope.
They have no hope.
Oh.
Because he's like, he's just one of those people. It's just like, he's so athletic. Mm-hmm. Like, he's so quick and he's agile and he has great, physical attributes. But he's not big or anything, but he's, quick, shifty, stuff like that. But he just, every time he kicks a ball, it just makes me cringe because he kicks it and he's just like, he hits the ball all wrong and it's just like, how is this guy a professional player? And it's just really, I don't see it. I mean, he goes to the back post for Man City and scores tap-ins all day. So I don't think that he's much of a, does he score goals? Sure. But do I think he's very talented? No, I really don't think he's that talented. I think that Raheem Sterling is probably one of the most overrated players in the world right now. Wow. Just because he plays for such a good team.
That is a heavy statement right there.
Whatever.
Hey, nothing but the truth here.
Yeah. And then also, another game I wanted to talk about was Portugal-Egypt.
My boy, CR7, my guy.
Mainly just because of the two goal scorers, CR7 and Mohamed Salah scored one for Egypt. The game ended up 2-1. Mo Salah put Egypt ahead in the second half, but Cristiano Ronaldo scored in the 92nd and 94th minute, I believe, which, it was only a friendly, but again, you don't really want to go into the World Cup with knowing that you've lost to other World Cup teams, so it was a bit interesting.
Yeah, CR7 and Mohamed Salah, two guys who are two of the top players across Europe right now, especially, obviously I'm talking about for their club teams. They've both been playing at a high level this season. Just kind of talk about, especially more Salah, because I think we all know what CR7's capable of. Kind of just talk about Salah and his development and his improvement over the years or so.
This is a guy that got sold by Chelsea 3 years ago to Roma for not that much. I think it was only like 20-30 million, which especially in today's market isn't really anything. And he was just basically said, he's not good enough for us. Roma, you can have him. And then now he's coming in to the Liverpool side, and he's league top scorer with 28 goals with 7 games left. Mm-hmm. You know what the record is for most Premier League goals in a season?
I honestly could not tell you.
31.
Wow, so he is close. He is right on the heels.
He's right there. And for a player to come in and do that in their first season, he just scored 4 goals against Watford the other day, and he's just a brilliant talent, which is kind of interesting for me to say because he kind of has those moments like where I was talking about Raheem Sterling, where he just hits the ball and it just looks all wrong, but it just so happens to fly into the top corner. And but he's just so quick. It's kind of like, again, kind of a Raheem Sterling thing where he's just like, he's so quick and he's so shifty and
those physical skills.
But he's so good with the ball at his feet. If you see, he just sticks to him, just those little touches, and then he just gives him that one little body fake, and he's so quick that he can just get around anyone he wants, and it's kind of beautiful to watch him play.
Nice.
Now, also want to talk about the Champions League, which is coming up on the 3rd and the 4th.
We can edit this part out, right?
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe we can talk about, kind of just to spread out, because we won't have as much soccer to talk about the rest of the week. I was thinking maybe we could hit the Champions League heavy tomorrow. Or do you want to talk about it today? Just so that way we can spread out the soccer content throughout the week. Today's Monday.
So I'm saying I could just talk about, basically do what you did for the Final Four preview. Just basically talk about.
Because they're playing this weekend.
They're playing They're playing next week.
Okay.
The weekend after, or the week after the weekend of the Final Four.
Okay. All right. Cool.
Yeah, and we just wanted to give a little brief preview of the Champions League. Sevilla, Bayern Munich, obviously one of the best clubs in Europe, and I think both of our picks to go through, since Sevilla is probably the weakest of the remaining teams.
Yeah, Bayern, they've been a staple across Europe, especially in the German league and throughout the Champions League for the past couple of years. A lot of those players that have been so consistent for the German national team, also a member of Bayern. just kind of, do you feel like that cohesion helps them throughout the year, being able to play with each other almost year round? Feel like?
I don't think so much, just because they employ so many different philosophies. Because that's really the biggest difference between international and club play. Because club play, you can, like you said, you train with them all year round. Basically, I mean, you have a summer break, and in the Bundesliga you have a winter break. But for the most part, you're training with these guys every single day. But then you go into the international scene where you only train with them for 2 weeks every few months, and so I think them playing with each other and having that chemistry is good, but I don't think as far as stylistic advantage, it really gives them much of an advantage.
All right, let's move on to Juve, and my guy is Real Madrid. Just like I said, I'm a casual soccer fan at most, but Real Madrid is my team, as you heard me talk about earlier. CR7, that's my guy. So go ahead and give me some good news for Real, hopefully. Let me know something that's going on for them.
Well, the good news for Real Madrid is that they're doing what they've basically been doing the past 2 seasons now, where they've been okay in the first half of the season. Now they're hitting their form right when they need to.
Yep.
They're now, I mean, though their league form hasn't particularly picked up, I mean, they're still sitting in fourth, I believe, in the league. Um, their key players are starting to play better. Marco Asensio, he's coming into his own. Toni Kroos,
I like him.
his form is picking back up. Luka Modric, he's starting to play well again. And of course, Cristiano Ronaldo has been banging in the goals ever since 2018 started. So that's very, very good news for them. The bad news for Real Madrid is that Juventus has one of the best attacking forces in the world in Paulo Dybala. He is so brilliant to watch. I mean, all those things I said about Mo Salah, basically the same for him. He's not as quick, but he's just as dynamic, more technically skilled. He can also hit one, despite being so small. He can hit him from range. And then also Gonzalo Higuain, who is probably the fattest good player in the world, but can still bang him in the air. He scored a brilliant goal against Tottenham in the round of 16 I think it was in the first leg, yeah, where he came over his shoulder. He just banged the volley bottom corner.
I remember. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So it's just two teams that are very good attacks, and I think Real Madrid is. I think they'd be a little bit concerned, because since they are so focused on attack, they might have a problem.
Being able to defend Juve.
Yeah, being able to cope, because they're so good at counterattacking. I mean, Blaise Matuidi, he's such a dynamic player. For him, if he could find that space to bring the ball up, get it up to Dybala and Higuain, I mean, it'll be a problem for them.
Doesn't sound like good news for us, but we'll see. How about let's talk about Barcelona and Roma. Let me know what's going on there.
I mean, there's not really much to talk about. I mean, Barcelona is the only undefeated team in Europe right now, and they've just
looking good, looking great.
They've just been amazing. The only concern for them is that Ousmane Dembele's form hasn't been amazing, but it's okay, because he's just coming back from injury. But if they can get him to hit his stride right at the right time, that'll be fine. And also, they're going to need Coutinho, not in the Champions League, because he's already cup tied with Liverpool, so he can't play in the Champions League. So, but they're going to need him in the league, because if Iniesta at his advanced age cannot be playing Champions League and in the league every week. So they're going to need him to come up big in the league, so they can keep winning those games and not have to worry about putting Iniesta in at that time, because he's so key to their attack and bringing the ball out from the back. Lastly, the tie that I am most interested in is Liverpool-Man City, because
good old-fashioned English rivalry.
Yeah, these are two teams that, though haven't been, don't have a history of having a rivalry together ever since new money's come in for Man City, and ever since Liverpool's picked back up. They're now obviously title rivals, have been the past few years. Probably the two most talented sides in the English top flight in the Premier League, but still going to have to pick Man City. I mean, Pep Guardiola's drilled this team so well together. I mean, players like Kevin De Bruyne, Raheem Sterling, Leroy Sané, Gabriel Jesus. I mean, if you have a player of his caliber coming off the bench, it's just absolutely stunning to see how much talent they have.
Yeah, and even for me as a casual soccer fan, just seeing that style that Pep Guardiola likes to put his boys through is just beautiful to watch.
Kind of reminds me of Kikatan a little bit. Kikatan soccer. I heard they try to emulate Pep Guardiola's style.
Yeah, fuck them. Yeah, we can cut that.
No, I'm not gonna cut that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's another thing we you can see if you live in the area, in the Hampton Roads area. Big games this week, for Bethel Soccer, who I play for, Chad coaches for.
Coach. Yeah.
Who do we have? We can give a little preview.
We got 3 games coming up this week. Traveling to Gloucester Tuesday.
No, we're not. We're playing at home.
They got Gloucester at home on Tuesday.
And we're traveling to Kickingham and playing Hampton at home on Thursday.
So big 3-game week for Bethel Soccer. So if you guys have the chance, come out and support if you're in the local area.
Anything else from sports you want to talk about for today?
No, I think that's about it. Kind of recap the Elite Eight, little Final Four preview. Talked about a lot of international soccer. Gave a little Champions League preview. So I think I think we covered a nice wide range of topics today.
What do you think is the most interesting, especially going into the end of this sort of, because you know how sports are kind of split into summer, winter,
right?
Kind of coming into the end of this season of sports. What do you think is the most interesting looking forward to next season, kind of the spring sports?
I tell you one thing, and this isn't a spring sport, but one thing that I'm going to definitely be keeping my eye on is the NFL draft coming up end of next month, April. I believe it starts April 27th. But I'm interested to see what the teams at the top are going to do, and then the teams that are contending and that are contenders, I'm going to try and see what they're going to do to kind of push themselves to the next level. There's been a lot of chirping around, obviously, for good measure about the Cleveland Browns making a lot of big trades. They got Jarvis Landry, Tyrod Taylor, Demarius Randall. So kind of seeing what they're going to do to build off the successful offseason that they've already had. And some other teams, obviously the Cowboys, I'm interested what they're going to do. We got the 19th pick in the first round, so crossing my fingers, hoping that Derwin James can fall to us, or maybe Rashawn Evans. So that's what I'm most interested. How about yourself? Looking forward to some spring stuff.
Not really spring stuff, but more summer stuff. I like a lot of the summer sports, especially with this year being a World Cup year. I mean, even though America isn't in it, the World Cup is just such a spectacle. Just always on the edge of my seat. I mean, even the bad teams are still fun to watch because it's just the international pride. I mean, I just love seeing the people stand there at the national anthem with their arms wrapped around each other, just singing their hearts out and being so proud to play for their nation. And also, it's just I can't wait to see the German and French teams this year because they kind of have a similar thing going on where they're heavy favorites.
Right.
I think Germany's the bookies' favorite. I think they're like 5-1 to win the tournament or something like that. And and France has a similar wealth of talent that they have. So I'm very interested for this summer.
All right. Well, guys, I think this will conclude our second episode of In the Huddle. Remember, subscribe, like, comment, let us know what you guys want us to talk about. So until next time, we'll see y'all later.
Peace.
See ya.